So now that you know the terminology needed, let's talk about what's actually expected of you in Phase 1. So basically the whole project is broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 being your initial planning phase, what we're about to do now. Phase 2 is a proposal phase where you bring everything together in a lot more detail for the goal of proposing it to a prospective publisher, for example, to give you funding. And phase 3 is the actual implementation of the product itself along with all of its accompanying documentation. So we're going to focus on phase 1 right now, which is the pre-planning. So as we can see on the screen here, this is a pre-design phase of the project. So basically you're going to give me a broad overview of what you plan on doing. So first thing you need to do is come up with a company name. If you were to start a video game company tomorrow, what would you call it? Then you're going to go to the website and you're going to open the document Initial Project Planning, which should be on Google Classroom or something similar when you do this assignment. Now in that assignment, or in that document, you're going to fill out a series of information. So let me just quickly jump over to that so you can see what it actually looks like. So basically I want to know your name, your company's name. What are you going to call your game? What genre is your game in? Is it a horror game? Is it a platformer game? Is it a tower defense game? What kind of game is it? Game viewpoint, that's basically the camera angle. Is it top down like a bird's eye view? Is it a side scroller? What is it at this point? Don't just say 2D or 3D. That's not good enough. Game graphical theme description. So try and paint a picture for me. What am I going to see? I should be able to visualize the game like this. So for example, is it a creepy haunted mansion? That's an environment. It tells me a mood and everything like that. Or is it like a green meadow with blooming flowers and a bright blue sky, right? So give me an idea of what I should expect to see. The game overview. So this is the description. What is your game about? What is the player's goal? What makes the game fun? How will it be controlled? How many people can play the game? Give me all the information. This etc. is to show you. I want you to be able to visualize your game. If I can't read this overview and visualize your game, then you need to take another stab at it. So when you're done, get somebody to proofread it for you and say, hey, do you know what this game is going to be about? If they can't answer that question, then you need to take another stab at it. Then finally we get into the meat and potatoes of things, the objectives. You need to choose 5 of those objectives that we discussed earlier. Now, be careful. You shouldn't be choosing 5 objectives and then shoehorning a game around those objectives. You can't say, well, I want to have a game with animation, I want to have a game with projectile motion. That's not the way it's done. That's gonna produce a very unfun game. It's gonna produce a game that's not very interesting to play. What you should be doing is coming up with a fun and awesome game idea and then figuring out which objectives apply to that game. Now, that doesn't mean your game is only going to have 5 of those objectives. It may have 9 of them. But which 5 are you going to focus on and make sure you get those marks for? Okay? So that's what these are for. The rest of the objectives that you complete on top of that, that'll come in later on to your subjective marks. But we don't need to state them here. All I want is the 5 main objectives you plan on implementing in your game. Once you've decided on the 5, for each of them, I want you to describe what is the objective, where will I see it in the game. Alright, so collision detection. What is the objective? For that example, if in Super Mario Brothers, it might be collision detection between the player and the ground, the player and the enemies, the player and pickup items, the player and beanstalks, the player in tubes, things like this. Give me some idea of where I'll see it in the game. Describe to me what it is exactly. And then give yourself a rough idea of how challenging you think it's going to be to implement at this point. Now, it should be pretty challenging. Most of these should probably be at least 7s. If they're not, then you need to rethink the objective. Okay? Now remember, what's a 7 for you is not necessarily a 7 for the person that sits beside you in class. I want to know what your difficulty will be to implement this. And don't just put 10 down there. That doesn't impress me. That's not really the point here. I want to know what you legitimately think it is in terms of its difficulty. You're not being marked on how difficult each individual one is specifically. I just want to know that you're challenging yourself. So that is our our planning document. And this is basically what you're responsible for phase 1. Just go back here. And that document must be submitted, and then it'll be approved by your teacher and in short order, and then you can go on to phase 2, which we'll discuss in the next section. But before I get on there, let's quickly discuss certain things. Academic honesty. So it is expected that all code that you produce in this project is your own. You're not borrowing anything from anybody, any place, any past assignments that aren't your own. You can use your own code from the past, that's fine, but nobody else's, and failure to meet this will be dealt with pretty swiftly and accordingly. So make sure that everything you hand in is yours for sure. In the next module, we're going to go over some little tips to help you get on the way.